Hello, hello. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay, seems to be working.
Last question.
No, it's actually.
Oh, shit, it was answered. Okay.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
what they called it.
Yeah, I didn't read the answer. It's Old Town boundaries.
I was thinking informational sheet at times that would have answered that question.
That's section. Almost.
We put it in the presentation. We're gonna do a little bit of a, yeah, I don't, you can't take too much of a deep dive or else I will be the one holding us up. Don't hold.
As my teenager says, hold the Yakutino. No Yappy Mills here.
I like it.
We're ready? Okay. All right, good evening. This is the July 9th, 2024 meeting of the City of Jefferson Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Alan Weed. I'm chairperson of this commission. And we'll start. Tiffany, if you want to introduce yourself and we'll go around.
Tiffany Patterson.
Donna Leeds. Rachel Senzi, city staff.
Aaron Neely, City Council Liaison to the Commission.
Christine Boston.
Laura Ward. Deborah Green.
Brian Warren. Brett Schaefer.
Amanda Gallagher, city staff.
Thank you. And we do have a quorum present. Do I have kind of a motion to adopt the agenda as printed or amended?
So approved. So move.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And now for the approval of the regular meeting minutes. From the last meeting, have a motion to approve regular meeting minutes of June 11th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Here we go, motion is
Wait a minute,
second.
wait a minute. We did not have a meeting. We have a meeting on the right?
Yeah.
Listed.
Meeting. We just couldn't vote, so there are meetings, we had discussion.
So this was what was included. So we don't need to approve
Okay,
that. We'll just send to the clerk that there was no meeting. There was no meeting. Okay, yeah, that's my fault. I should have caught that.
so not. Never mind.
Unmoving.
Okay,
Second.
old business, RFP East Capitol Avenue. You vote on 2 members to send to the closed session city council meeting.
Okay, do you want an update on that conversation? Okay. So the,
In our last meetings. Sorry.
That's okay.
Side.
Oh. Well, we can, so the, as you'll recall, the last special meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, it was the recommendation from this body to city council, or to the Public Works and Planning Committee rather, was to make a few changes to the RFP itself, and then also request that there be a review by this body before the RFPs go to full council. In between that and Public Works and Planning, there was conversations in a slip sheet that was put in recommending that the HPC supply 1 person to the RFP process. And the concern there was more time, the time to go through this body and then taking the time to go through council. It was perceived by some on the planning and public works committee that it was going to be too long and the building was in rough shape. So the ask was that 1 HPC member participate in the actual council review as a recommending person. Internally as staff, we wanted to look at maybe supplying 2, like, and we talked about potentially Tiffany Patterson and Brad. Tiffany's for her experience with tax credits and potential there, and Brad as an architect was kind of the very informal, very off the cuff, not probably the proper way to do business, but that was discussed, and then Public Works and Planning actually accepted that proposal. So we mentioned that we would bring it back to this body and discuss it in a full public forum and see if that's the direction that this body wanted to go in, and if HBC would be willing to supply two recommending members to the RFP process,
Rachel,
the scoring process.
can you clarify a couple things?
Sure,
The RFP has gone out, correct?
correct. It's open right now.
And when is the deadline?
August 2.
Is it August 2nd? Okay, August 2nd. And when do they think a review meeting will be set up? Because that'll make a difference on if folks can sit on that.
I'm not sure when they're planning on reviewing it at council. It will be in a closed session. So I doubt, it will definitely not be August 5th. I think the earliest it could be is August 19th.
And will the people who will be on that review committee get a packet beforehand to go through?
I will make sure that that happens. So, and it would be important that the two representatives would be advisory only, would not have a vote. It's council decision. But then, we would maybe alleviate that conversation of what does historic, how, because that's Capitol Avenue is a, I don't want to call it a tricky spot, but it is tricky because you have the, a potential of new development, you have a potential of infill, and then you also have potential of preservation and rehab and some of those structures. So I think the questions that may be going back and forth about the rehab, the preservation of the existing structures, I think that's where HPC could really, or those two representatives could really add some value to the conversation.
Just for clarification, the two members from this body will set in the closed session, the council's closed session in advisory capacity for all of the properties within the ongoing RFPs, not just Capitol Avenue, but Jefferson Street and
That is my understanding. Because the infill and the new construction is just as important as the rehab, because you want to make sure that they fit in, that you're going to keep some of the structures and rehab, then that design of the new architecture that goes in is also important.
Two other questions. Number one, the city council cannot turn down who we recommend. I mean, they don't have to vote on who we recommend.
They don't have to vote, but they could. I mean,
They could say they don't want
city
to.
council kind of has that power and
I
that
know.
authority to do. They're the chief, okay? They're the elected.
And next question is, can we also have an alternate in case something happens and one of the two people that we suggest is not available?
I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be acceptable.
I just want to make sure people are in there.
Yeah.
And were two separate RFPs, correct? One for East Capitol and then one for Jackson and
Yeah.
Jefferson. They're two separate ones and they're just now, I believe, because they're just now put out information regarding going into and touring two on Jackson and the one on Jefferson.
For this week. So that information.
Right, they're-
Weeks ago.
They're open houses right now. Hold on, let me.
Open houses are
Yeah,
happening today,
right.
tomorrow, and Friday, Thursday.
Yes, yes.
Right, so
Tomorrow,
are
I
they
think it's
two
like 10
separate
to-
RFPs or that?
I think they're the same. Let me double check that.
I think you had to click that.
City
more button.
website should have them on the.
Yes.
So they are.
Well, seemed like they were being treated as separate in all the discussions because.
Yeah, I got that impression too, that it was being separate, two separate RFPs sent out.
So that would probably be two close
They're
sessions.
all packaged together, but the Capitol Avenue RFP is Capitol Avenue and Jackson Street, I understand. That the Jefferson Street is the property, and that Miller Street would be the third.
So what you're saying is we could do like Tiffany, Brad, and they do an alternate like wall.
And that's up to you all. So here is, if you go to the city's website under the news and headlines, that you'll have the actual RFP itself, and it does look like they're bundled together. It's not two separate, it's the same.
It just said there's 3 RFPs. Set line, 3 requests for proposals are open.
okay, so yeah, so correct, 3,
There's 3 RFPs.
I guess. Hold on, let me double check, this will tell us for sure. Yeah, separate, so you've got East
Jefferson.
Capitol Avenue, 611 Jefferson,
The 320 million, yeah, no.
So do they all 3 have different deadlines, which would probably mean 3 separate potential?
And they all have the same deadline, I think, August
Oh,
2nd.
they do.
Same day.
Okay, okay. They're just now opening up Jefferson, 2 on Jackson.
August 2nd, August 2nd, August 2nd.
Well, maybe just, I'm sorry, I don't need to talk a lot, but just some clarification there, that the East Capitol properties had some stipulations, you had
Yeah.
insurance, those types of extra
Yeah.
entry. Whereas the
You have
the
to sign
other
waiver.
agreements, sign liability, you
Yeah.
have to have that
Still.
insurance.
Kind of cuts.
So I think there were.
Cuts the timeline
because of
somewhat to
that.
the side.
Yes. And while we're on, this are the open houses. We did have open houses today, and we'll have open houses tomorrow night and Thursday. This is for 211 and 212 Jackson, and then tomorrow is 611 Jefferson Street from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
So,
I make a motion.
Okay.
We put Brad Schaefer and Tiffany Patterson in as our consultants,
So
city council.
Okay, so a motion and second. Do you all accept?
I think with enough advance warning, I should be able to attend, yeah.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion second. Do we have any discussion?
just to give you all a heads up on procedure, there will be a council meeting and then the closed sessions after the council meeting. So whether or not you set your own council meeting, it's kind of maybe up to you or TBD. Because it's hard to know when that meeting will end and, when that closed session will begin. So just a heads up there, council meetings begin at 6 p.m. And then the closed session will follow that meeting. They are broadcasted live on YouTube. So I guess one thing you can do is keep track of it on YouTube. But
I don't know why did they come?
just a heads up that the procedure will kind of be a pain for you because that whole meeting will happen before that session.
And once I get a date marked out, I'll let you know as soon as they. Where.
Any other discussion? Okay, you going to do?
Boston.
Voting.
Yeah. Sorry, I just couldn't think of what I was supposed to say.
Yes, yes.
No, in Senate, we have very specific and such, so.
Dietz,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yep.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Yes,
Warren.
and the motion carries. Okay,
Alan, I have a second motion.
okay,
I move that Laura Ward be our alternate for those two.
do you accept that? Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay,
Boston,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Patterson,
Sure.
Schaefer,
yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
We're gonna have to start with Ward or Ward or something. Yeah.
Going alphabetical, sorry.
Okay, that motion carries. Okay. Rachel, a few HPF grant updates.
Section 106.
Good, sorry. You did that?
Did I skip?
Yep.
You go down. Okay, Rachel, new business. Section 106 review, 415 Clark Street.
Yes, before I get to the specifics of the project, I'd like to touch base on section 106 review. Dr. Green had sent an email, which I thought was great. Why are we reviewing air conditioners and HVACs? And then I realized that we need to probably update where the lay of the land and why we do these things. So if you'll entertain me, I'll kind of give a brief overview of kind of two United States laws that we have to follow and the reason why we participate in this. So the first thing is the National Historic Preservation Act. So section 106 is literally section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. And so it basically it's putting to task the federal government and its agencies that you need to consider the impacts that you have on cultural resources before you spend federal dollars on this. So that's one component, and that is when we talk about section 106, that is in its literal sense, its literal form, what that is. You'll also hear us talk a lot about NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act. This came afterwards, I think 1970, whereas National Historic Preservation Act came in 66. So this one kind of took that same vein of we need to be making sure that we're not having these impacts on cultural resources, and it applied it to all things environmental. So section 106 also feeds into NEPA. And so this is where you hear us talking about, are there endangered species? Are there impacts to the soil? Are there impacts to the air? And what happens is every federal agency, if there's a dollar of federal money in it, we have to go through these processes. So that's why we do it. So what you have the federal agency that's providing the funding. You have, in our case, the State Historic Preservation Office is representing kind of the state in its consulting realm. And then as a local government, because we're a certified local government through the National Park Service, we are also a consulting party. So that's why we review the HVACs, and that's why we review like cell towers across the river, because they're requesting our comment to see if, as experts on the local level of historic preservation, if that project is having an impact or a negative impact, or positive or neither. Just to kind of run through, that's terribly small, but you don't have to read it. So anytime, and this is from HUD, so anytime that we have a project, we have to look at the type of project and the undertaking. And there's all these different levels and process flow charts that we have to go through. The first one is exempt, and that's usually what I call paper pushing projects. So it's like down payment assistance or something where you're providing federal dollars, but you're not actually having any sort of impact. And then you have projects that are categorically excluded, which is this next one. And that's usually like property acquisition or things that are very benign, or like ADA accessibility requirements. Those will bring it here. Where we're at with the HVACs is the second one. It's also categorically excluded, but it's subject to different parts. So it's like, well, what kind of HVAC? Are you doing an HVAC on a residential property? Or are you doing an HVAC on an industrial large? So they don't really differentiate between the two. So we have to go through this process and procedure. Now, what happens is we go through all these different steps, and then when we consider cultural resources, we have to send it to the SHPO and send it to the tribes, and we also have to come to the Historic Preservation Commission and say, we're spending this money on this project. Do you see any reason? Because HVACs, I mean, you have to pour concrete pads, you have to drill holes in buildings, and it may not seem like a lot when we're looking at these residential projects, but when like Ameren updates the gas utilities downtown, placement of that is important, to not detract from this.
Cell tower that came through us.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what happens with these projects and what will probably happen with these projects is we go through all these little green boxes and then it converts to exempt. And we bundle our package together and we send it off to HUD and say, we've done our due diligence. It's not gonna have these impacts. Because we went through the consulting process, but that's generally what happens with these projects, but, that's why we go through step by step. It's because we're just doing our due diligence to make sure that the federal government knows how we're spending the money and the impacts of it. That's a very brief overview of that, but if you guys have any questions, but I'm glad you asked because I get so stuck in my world that I forget that it's not.
No, I was just thinking that they can't put a similar old HVAC in there. So why are we putting it?
Yeah.
And I understand because when we were doing buildings at Lincoln, you know, they would come through and say, you gotta have the same windows. And this is a 1940s building. Why would you want the same windows in there? But I understand, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is just the process.
And this is income-based, right?
This program, yeah, so this program is through our community development block grant. We call it our emergency home repair. So if somebody, and most of the times it's HVACs, water heaters, sewer laterals, just those kind of expensive porches.
Yeah.
Falling porches, yeah. Sometimes we're roof, ADA accessibility, and it is income based.
I think it has to be energy based too, right?
So that has to be, that is a component underneath that. So they just, updated as of July 1st, we have new regulations and there is like a climate resiliency and energy component. Before it was just kind of like a blanket, you know, what was the air quality and that sort of thing. And sometimes you had to like, if you're in an ozone attainment area or some, there's, but now they're requiring you to look at like the impact of climate change.
How much money do we have? That's gonna make me look bad, not knowing what we budgeted.
So, well, that's part of our, so we have a 5-year consolidated plan. Yeah, so it's all CDBG. So it's a little bit like council appropriates the funding, but it's backed by federal tax dollars. So it just doesn't generally get budgeted by council, if that makes sense.
Is there a certain amount of funding that is set aside in that particular pot that residents would have access to for these types of?
Yeah.
programs?
Yeah, we have, I think this year we have 30,000, which could fund up to 6 projects. And it changes. So we do a 5-year consolidated plan, which we actually have our 24 to 29 out for public comment right now. And so we go through a whole stakeholder process of how do we spend this money? And in this round, it was all things housing. We did put a historic preservation line item in there because we feel like historic preservation and housing kind of can go hand in hand. So looking at that, right now, our emergency home repair can fund up to $5,000. As soon as we get the con plan in order and we can make some shifts, we're gonna probably update our policies and procedures to make it 30,000. It's just a little bit more impactful and, you know, most of the times, you know, $5,000 isn't covering the sewer laterals or the roofs or the. So we're having a lot of overruns and people are having to come out of pocket, which, you know, is less than what they would have, but it's still not covering, it's not the intent of the program. Try to up the threshold. It means less projects, but they're more impactful to those that can.
based on these two, you just need a motion saying that historic preservation has reviewed it and agreed with the.
So this is, well, we probably need to make a recommendation based on our assessment in this form, yeah.
Yeah, it's page 3 of 28.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're both very similar. This first wasn't. This first project, is at 415 Mark Street. It is usually a useful life of air conditioner. What we do is we go out to do site assessments. We get the serial number off the HVAC, we enter into the, I think it's permit energy. And you can see how old the unit is. Usually a useful life for an HVAC is 10 to 12 years. So this one, for 415 Mark, was 25 years old and is not functioning in the kitchen. There's a location of the address, Sweet Cocoa map. And then here's the property. HVAC upside. So sometimes in these cases, like this one, just has a cinder block, well, they'll probably pour a concrete pad, which will be, invasive. And I'm not sure if it'll be decided the same. They keep the same ductwork and whatnot, so the actual unit is usually pretty close to, unless there's some modifications there.
They now have plastic pads.
Do they?
Yeah, pre-bed.
Yeah.
Recycled soda bottles.
Are they replacing the condenser and the air handler? This, you see pictures of the air handler.
Yeah, on some of these, and I'm not sure, I didn't go to this one, but the Nelson one, it was in the crawl space and I wasn't.
Well, I would say that adequate documentation has been provided and there are no structural property affected.
So that's your motion.
That's my motion, yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Any other discussion? What was it? You want to do a roll call? Okay.
Boston,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yep.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay. So next we have.
It's on the actual app.
Yeah.
Down in the toolbar.
Yeah, the toolbar where that.
You see that?
With three is.
Three, yes, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Flag. Page, 15. Thank you. Okay, 712, Nelson Drive, also an HVAC. This is one I did decide this on. It was manufactured in July of 1993, making it 31 years old. So it's well past the useful life. For that, as mentioned, this was in photos. On the back, she actually had, she actually had two units on the back side. I think they'll just probably get it one that's more appropriate. And then this was partially in the crawl space, which I was not. Same program. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
These are on, correct?
Yes.
So anybody can ask for these funds?
Anybody, yep, and then we do an income eligibility assessment. Um. Let me find out what the threshold is right now. I'll show you where all can be found.
Because I'm gonna save some money,
I know that's exciting.
Because the city. So we have, if you want to find out more about the city's programs, the best way to get there is this blue bar. And you can go to funding opportunities. And these are all the programs that we have available. The emergency assistance repair program here. So here are the income limits and it's based off of household. And it updates yearly.
There is one.
So currently, a single person making $53,900 would qualify for this program.
Is it earnest?
What's that? Yes. So every year, about April, this year was May, so they're a little bit late. They do income update, eligibility updates. So this does update.
So do they look at like savings and other assets, or is it just the income?
I mean, they'll look at, it depends on you. They look at what kind of income you have, like, is it social security, is it, and then you, some of it is, eligible and some of it's not. So they have like a whole checklist. There's a whole calculator that you can do. A little sidebar.
Because that's when we're looking at the CDBG overview and plans for the upcoming and the housing group that we're getting on.
Yes.
It's interesting that we guys are doing at the same
Same
time.
time.
I've been on this board for a year and a half. It's the first time I've seen.
First time I've seen one for air conditioners and I've been on it. How long?
For other things, like
It's not air conditioners.
Yeah, usually we do a lot of sewer laterals. Because I think that's just, and a lot of times those, so if it is like an emergency situation, which sometimes a sewer lateral can be, we enter, there's like an emergency phase where you don't have to go through this and it does go over to exempt, because but we can do it there, but a lot of times if it's something to where, they're getting some backup in their basement, but it's manageable and not dangerous yet, then we'll go through this.
And this makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any time that your funding goes unused, or do you use all of your?
We use all of it.
Okay.
So we go, and we have it broken down into program goals on what we're trying to achieve. Like we'll talk about, we want to do 10 down payment assistance applications, we want to do 5 emergency home repairs, just based off of need, but we have the ability to, right now, there's not as many down payment assistance applications, and so I think we're getting more on the home repair side. And that's different, because I would say 3 years ago, we were out, the down payment assistance applications were going crazy. And then we didn't do as many emergency home repairs. Don't know if it's the housing market or how that works out, but it was just, we shifting a bit. Yeah, so we have under our CDBG, we could do down payment assistance, emergency home repair. Some of our demolitions, so we do a lot of the demos for, but it has a 1-to-1 replacement. So like Habitat, we work with them a lot. We will demo the property for them in exchange for them building the house.
Does the city have, and you probably do, I just not saying it, does the city have a list of its neighborhoods?
Well, like,
Because Laura said Old Town, okay? So what designates Old Town? I kind of already know that because I was looking for a house years ago in the Old Town area.
Yeah.
I think they were giving me money to buy the Old Town area. But does the city have a list of, because since our conversation, not in June, in May, about, the Alliance buying those houses, they bought those houses years ago. So if if we're going to educate neighborhoods on how to protect their neighborhoods, we won't be sitting here after the fact. Because once I purchase it as a private individual, I think I can do whatever I want with it. So if we're going to educate the neighborhood as to how to keep their properties intact and therefore keep the neighborhoods intact, because I've been driving up and down Capitol and, it's kind of sad, you know, because that street, it's wide open and beautiful, but you know what's gone. And, you know, having worked at Lincoln University, what's on that campus now is one building from the 1930s and everything else is 1940s. I remember coming to the University of Missouri and they had trash cans in the hallway catching the water that was coming through the roof, but they did not tear down Jesse Hall. So, but Lincoln University's campus is not the campus that was there when they started building buildings there. So. Next generation.
I have no idea
Will not know what
areas are.
Except for in books.
It's a good idea to have something on the
Yeah.
website.
And then that way, you know, if you move into a certain neighborhood, you know, how long the neighborhood's been there, you know, the house tours that you guys, do. But
Well, and
think
we're
about
getting,
for the African American community, they ain't got nothing that says, hey, we were here.
Well, that's the,
Yeah. The community center.
there is, we did have a meeting. Yeah. With, building community bridges and. Smart, is that her?
Probably Alicia just became
Yeah.
a member.
But they were wanting to know about the lodge and community center and there's the church there. So I think at the last conversation now that I said we need to go with the HPC and request. Like, let's work on this. Cause there's
Just pretty old. 'Cause I just read the history of Jefferson City. And in the 19th century, they were listing out all of the groups and they had the lodge in there, the founding members of that lodge and all, you know.
But we don't, there's not a lot of resources left, but there are some. And then if you, I'll let them, I think they're planning on coming to the August meeting.
Okay.
And I'll let them make that request, because that was that we met with them and they said, you know, this is something that's very like community driven, so private. Start with the HPC, see if they.
I was gonna say, have them get a hold of Stacy with HCJ, because we've got all our books and notebooks full
Yeah.
of information that we've
But then
put together.
it is like from a staff perspective, like doing, you know, kind of looking at neighborhoods and doing what I do, there's a lot of funding mechanisms right now that can do anything from, you know, sort of from preservation type grants to parks, like connecting parks to there's initiatives for whatever urban renewal brought highways through Black communities. There's funding for that. So you can get funding from transportation, you can get funding from park service, you can get funding for arts, you can get funding for parks. Like there's just a lot where, you know, if there was like a concentrated neighborhood plan. So you could really do some transformational things, especially to get Lincoln brought into the fold and get it all connected. Well, because there's, you know, 50 highway splits, but there's ways to connect and to do that. So I think that's something that they're interested in. But that's something that we can't drive as staff, that they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, as a community organization coming. So they are talking about coming in.
And they did a huge community oral history deal down at the community center, week before Juneteenth. They started doing videos of oral histories of people that are still living around here. So they've got a whole lot of stuff gathered together on that. I have not seen the videos
What
yet.
happened to the historic city of Jefferson's project,
Which one?
African American history one?
It's sitting there. I don't know what Stacy is doing. I'm kind of pushing. I don't have control of it anymore. You didn't hear me say that.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so back to this air conditioner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so on 712 Nelson, you said that you pointed out there are 2 units there now, but she'd only get 1. This house is 2,900 square feet. Has somebody, I mean, so whenever they went out there to evaluate this, did they look at that, or are they just
Yeah,
looking at just, well, there's nothing here, we're just gonna replace one of them? So obviously it's a split system someplace.
so that was the option when we're working with contractors, that it doesn't have to stay that way. So one of the units is no longer working and then it's relying on the one. So it's, and I think one of them we couldn't even read the tag on it. So. And then the other one had the date of. Three.
Yeah, because it's not a 2-story home.
So I guess my question is we're giving this money for this unit?
Yeah.
For 1 unit?
It's whatever the contractor comes in and says, like, you could take this out and just put it in a mini split, and be done with it. But I don't think that's what they're gonna do. But we leave that up to the property owner and the contractor.
That is a specific 7 months.
Yeah, it's just, we're only concerned with heating and cooling the house. With this.
So Rachel, just to be clear, if the property owner says it's gonna be $10,000 fix, we cap it at 5, we only give it 5.
Yes, and they have to come up with the other.
Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, they could put in 2 if they wanted to, they would just be paying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's beyond our
Right.
consideration. They can do what they want and the city's going to determine whether or not they're spending the money the way they should. We just have to say whether or not a historic property is going to be affected. So no offense, but we're like talking about a lot of.
I just wondered why you said that there was 2 units and we were gonna do 1. I mean, I just wonder, I just think that sometimes we don't take care of a problem. That's why we end up losing
Band-Aid.
property all over. My concern. Okay, so do we have any other discussion on this? We have a motion.
I was that we move forward, right, with this list, but it's not gonna impact.
Is it the adequate documentation that's been provided?
Yeah.
To know if the property.
All of the above.
Yes,
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Austin,
Yes.
Dietz,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Patterson.
Yep.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Ward. Yes. Warren,
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes. Okay, other business. HPF grant updates.
Yes, so we have our phase 2 West Main survey. Stan Tech has filled out their survey forms and has sent it to the SHPO. Our deadline for that is technically July 15th, which is Monday. We went ahead and started initiating the reimbursement packet for it while the SHPO reviews the product. I don't know if they're gonna extend it or if they're just gonna take that review past it. But we should have a finished product that we'll share hopefully by the next meeting of an approved survey results. It does look like there is some eligibility for National Register in that area. So we'll probably come back with next steps on what to do with kind of our West Main survey work to date and ask what this body wants to do moving forward.
Design guidelines.
Also in review by the SHPO, kind of thought I'd have it back by now, but we're waiting. And again, we'll bring it back once we get a polished product.
Phase 3 West Main Street.
So that one, we did receive the grant to do further kind of marching down West Main. We just recently sent in the award documents for it. And I know Amanda's been working on the request for proposal draft, that we'll send out, to go ahead and get more survey work done.
So it might not be stand tech in this.
It might not be, we have to formally procure each time.
MSP updates.
A RFQ for the river market, went out last week. It was last week. And that is for the design of the river market and the connecting trails, to it. Right now, there's still the One Health Lab did an official groundbreaking. We're still having conversations with the Office of Administration on what Chestnut Street will look like. And there's also overarching conversations about, the wall to keep, not to keep, or partially keep, or DNR keep, or, there's lots of options as well as the gas chamber is still, whether or not it's gonna be or not is still, I think, if I get the concept right, if DNR is going to take over the property as a state historic site, they want to keep the wall and they want to keep the gas chamber where it's at. So it's more of, figuring out, the collaboration with the state. As far as the community revitalization grant goes, we are taking an approach to kind of design around those questions and uncertainties because the grant has that deadline attached to it. And also the state of Missouri has the right to exercise right of reentry if we do not build that river market by July of next year. So we've got some tight timelines that we're trying to stay on top of. But the design for the river market is out and the connecting trails. It may be that we build kind of an interior road around, and that's gonna be kind of the design concept to plan for what happens if we keep the wall, what happens if we keep the gas chamber, how can we access and still access the site, but maintain the wall and the gas chamber. If that is the decision that gets.
Question on that, it's the RFQ, I haven't read it yet, is it for a general contractor, or is it for more design?
Yeah, so an RFQ, request for qualifications, is only, that's based off of, so that's where the price doesn't necessarily trump everything else. It's usually for architectural services, engineering, or land surveying. So it's a very specific type of procurement that you have to do, and it's just for design.
I felt like Martha had already done that.
So that was more of like, conceptual rendering. So design is more like you get your site elevations involved, you do your geotech to make sure that it can actually be supported there. So it's more of like your construction drawings,
I got you.
right? Like, here's your drawings, now, then we'll procure for construction contract, and then they will use those design drawings to actually build. That's just a little, it's like more detailed, whereas, what they had already provided was more of like conceptual, will this fit, will this work? And also to provide documents for the community safety, like this direction.
So that's it, but yeah. Thanks.
Ballroom grant.
Amanda and I have been spending a lot of time with our sub-recipients, and we've been talking to them about coming in. I think some will come in August and some will probably come in September. 300 East High is the only one that's still in environmental review stuff there. So we're working with the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office to get them out of that process. And then
Building's that.
that is the mobile insurance, Rick Breaker. And that's the only one that we kind of keep prodding on. The rest of them are in procurement phase. So today and yesterday, we had meetings with Cole County Historical Society and also 113 and 115 Madison. We're trying to touch base with all of our sub-recipients. I think some of the challenges that they're having is finding contractors to do the work.
Can imagine.
So we've talked about different approaches. That's also happening on our home repair program with CDBG. So one of the things that we're talking about internally is doing a massive contract for all things preservation work to hopefully maybe get some larger outfits. So if they come in from Kansas City or St. Louis and do all wet window restoration for all of our projects. You know, instead of a $30,000 project, they're looking at making more. So trying to bundle those out together to make it a little bit easier. So far, the Dunklin property is the only one to request reimbursement to say repairing the stairs. That was highlighted in the architectural survey from Walter P. Moore. So we will be requesting an extension from the National Park Service. These projects are supposed to be done in September of this year. Not gonna happen, and just to kind of do a measuring stick, we asked like how we work with other communities, and they're like, no, everybody's in the same boat. So we'll have them come in and give project updates. It's also been a little bit of a lesson learned on how to formally procure about projects and do seal bids. So that's been a learning curve for some, not all of them, some of our sub-recipients. But for the most part, they're really eager to get the work done. And we'll bring them into the JCPenney building is gonna get de-obligated. So we internally work with them. We asked that they hire a structural engineer to do an assessment, so that way we can determine that, you know, at least have like a list of things that they need to get done and see if we could still, they committed to doing it verbally, and then we never saw anything. It'll likely, become a code enforcement issue. It actually already has been. It's been declared dangerous, but, if they remain unresponsive, it'll to that step.
Does it share a wall with parking?
I think it does.
Share a wall with Barbina. Oh. I think so. If I remember right.
And that's, you know, and that's one of the reasons why we want to, as a city, stay on top of it. It's just to make sure we try to mitigate as much as possible. You know, we're always hoping for responsiveness from the property owners, but
As part of any enforcement actions or conversations leading up to enforcement actions, it's my understanding for public safety that the property is like the back of it. And have the owners gave any indication that they would do things to mitigate the damage, like not having the property?
there was, I believe my director was writing a letter to them, requesting with a deadline attached to it to have some sort of commence action, or else we start the next step.
They came before this commission about the back of the building. I don't remember what it was.
They wanted to take off.
They had to take you off the back end.
Yeah, the 60s edition or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they talked about how they were gonna close it up.
They just
That
haven't
was-
done what they're
Wasn't
supposed
that
to
before
do.
you?
That was before Paul Brun,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
because it was a
they
demolition.
came to us. They showed up that time. Were you here? Oh, you were?
Yeah.
I remember.
It was a long time ago.
That building is so much attention.
I hope to God that the engineering work shows that the building is salvageable. That's the question, right?
Well, it's salvageable, you throw enough money at it.
Yeah, and it's more of, you know, if there's a couple of like with prior situations like this, including this building. The city has got the administrative search warrant to bring in a structural engineer, so that way it tells, it's a way of like saying, this is, you know, we think this is dangerous, is this an actual overhead fall hazard? Do we need to close out sidewalks? Do we need to vacate common shared facilities on the other side? And that's the document that gives us justification. And also for the property owners, it also gives justification if it's not a concern. So whenever we did the structural assessment for this project that generated this project through Walter P. Moore, we had 6 properties pop up as the red that were like urgent, we've got to get on them. Out of those 6, I believe 2 were unresolved. Is one, some of them were like, failing parapets, that they didn't even realize was there. And, following the next week, they had scaffolding up and repair. Very responsive property owners, just didn't realize they had an issue. And then we have two properties that were, where we had to push. And it's all about responsiveness, it's, are you willing to do something, are you communicating? Because we'll bring every resource that we can to the table to try to prevent that. Otherwise, it's taxpayers' time. But there is a big process from declaring the building dangerous to the ultimate threat of demo. There's lots of layers and processes in between. So that's why we try to get on those.
Declaring building dangerous seems, historically speaking, like a trajectory.
Yeah, well, that building is already declared dangerous. Like, yeah.
Is that is a
Yeah.
trajectory in this town.
And it's, once a building gets declared dangerous, it can come off of that. It's just once it goes through the hearings and then it becomes to commencing action where the city has to abate, then it's that very black and white. Is a cost to abate the dangerous situation more than 50% of the overall property value? If it is, then the order is to demo. And that's it. So it's a very blunt tool. So hopefully what we always hope for is that there's a private transaction that can occur. And so sometimes, because so for that building, if we abate it as a demo, depending on how the common law issues come up, I mean, that's a huge $400,000 to $600,000 demo. And it gets tax liened onto the property. So as a property owner, sometimes there's more of an advantage to unload it versus taking the city's abate and pay them, which would.
That's 2.6 to 2.10 East High.
Yeah.
Is that property includes all of those addresses, that 2.6 to 8, that one building. I was trying to
That's correct.
visualize that.
But it's actually pretty cool upstairs. There's all kinds of interesting historic pieces still up there in the, built into the windows and the doors. Yeah, it's been in there several times.
HVC code revisions.
Yes, we met internally as staff, and all changes were accepted. But we did have an overarching comment, and it came into relation to how we are doing our design guidelines project with our HVC code revision. So how we had written the code, and I think what came out of the body was that anything that requires a building permit, that's the enforcement mechanism of how we would catch everything. But most of their design standards that we have on historic districts and historic properties are not a permanent process. We don't talk about doors. We don't have permits for doors. We don't have permits for windows. We don't have permits for siding. We don't have permits for porches unless it's structural. We don't have permits for residential roofs. So we're really not going to catch anything through that process. So our attorney brought up if that's, we need to ask that question. So we're going to reconvene the code revision committee to get that one last question asked and hopefully have our design guidelines by then, so we can maybe have an understanding of what's administrative and what would come through the HBC for a certificate of appropriateness process, because that's what we're talking about in the code revision. When was the June 23rd, probably in July 3rd.
Which date?
July 23rd, the Tuesday. I think you all said yes for that are here.
So the code revision committee will meet Tuesday, 6th, July
23rd.
Okay,
It's Tuesday.
and we'll get it. Or what?
I think it's 5.
Okay.
That's all right.
Or it's a Tuesday. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll send out confirmation on that tomorrow. I just want to give everyone a chance to get that.
Sidewalk sales. Why that's. We're done. Stoked.
We can really play before you.
Yeah,
That's it.
anybody online? Days to remember, next regular meeting, August 13th, 2024.
And that's not a set thing. We can still have a discussion about that.
No, August 13th.
August 13th.
For the next.
Oh,
The
I
next meeting.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, just letting you know now, because I
Thank you.
can't remember later.
Last summer, we issued a second demolition permit for 901 Jefferson. Should you guys check to see when that's gonna expire?
They came in. Yeah, they came in, was that last week or the week before last? They came in and put in a demo application.
Again? For the third time?
For the third.
So they have to actually pull the permit.
Oh, so they pulled the permit
So
for their
they
application.
apply, so they're going through like the utility shut-offs, and so what we have to check, there's like an internal checklist for it.
So it hadn't expired. Did you make sure it hadn't expired?
Yes, it expired July 6th. We looked it up because it was that close. It
But
hasn't
it had not
expired.
expired yet.
No,
And they don't
It
have
was
to have
weeks.
it down by the time it expires?
no, they just have to pull a permit.
So how long do they have to get it done after they pull the permit?
1 year, but they have the ability to request, kind of a continuous through the department director.
Oh my gosh, you have to have it down, but we can let it stand for 3 years.
So somebody can have a construction site near that for a year.
Maybe a construction site.
Well,
It's a demo site.
yeah, sorry. Demo.
Well, it's basically a demo site. It has been more than 2 years already.
Oh, right, because at their pace. Whoever
Their
lives,
first demo
but you're telling
permit
us what
expired.
years.
Because the Echo Lounge demo that we reviewed,
They
that
did
was
it like
down
the-
like,
Yeah.
Lickety
Like within
split.
2 days.
yeah, it was
It
like,
just depends on the applicant.
I guess so.
And how fast they contract.
Yeah, I think it's on the app.
What's that? Almost. When they got their second.
Yeah, the only thing that we could do to make it go through processes again, it doesn't occur within the time.
But it sounds like that it's
Another year.
Well, I mean, as long as
Yeah.
I'll check on I know they were in and our building, our tech came back. She was like, I know this went through, but when did it go through? I just have July. So we looked up the actual date. Double check it. They were still within that window, barely, but it's still within.
It would have been about a year ago.
And it's the HPC review is only over a year.
He knows to be. Yes.
And then regarding grant possibilities, I know we had talked about there being a lot of grants out there and the need for us to be surveying different historic areas, specifically the south side.
Yeah.
Did you guys locate any grant possibilities to initiate south side? Because I think there's a lot that's potentially gonna start popping up there that we need to
Yeah,
check.
I think what would be a good strategy is to create a strategy. Like, let's line out like the projects that we want to do as the HPC. I don't know if that means like a work session but like breaking out the historic preservation plan, breaking out the historic context and going through it. Because when it's in the plan, when it's in the context, it makes it so much easier because it's just. But
Well,
like,
I mean, kind of from a community standpoint, you know, our community there
Yeah.
and Old Unitburg Association, kind of waiting on the Historic Federation Code and having guidelines, so we can push forward with getting a district over there.
Yeah.
Again, we're being faced with major significant demos, right? So I just think any tools we have in our toolbox to help fight those, I need to.
let's line out projects. If you want, like survey work done or national register, because I know there's been some survey work done on the south side.
Well, the Dunklin Street isn't on the, well,
The
the 100 block is Broad, no, Broadway is.
Part of Broadway, but not south of Dunklin.
Right.
That's a nice street.
What
south
we're
of Dunklin.
worried about currently is corner of south of Jefferson and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the one that's in the RP, right?
Yeah, that
That
fourplex. Yeah, that's cute.
A demo rate. But we have. Except for our south side plan.
You want something?
Oh, no, I've been one.
Next motion.
Motion to what?
To identify.
To identify
the south side, to survey and do a grant work. An HPC, an HPF grant.
Come on, take that motion.
There, I made that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second for that.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
I think anything we could be working on, you
It's gonna
know,
help
and
Getting demolished.
Yeah, there's a huge chunk of the south side that we know is there, but we don't know what's there. Not in like an official capacity, I
it's
guess.
an extreme historic part of Jefferson City. Just kind of gets.
So I know they did some survey work with part of, when they did the multi-property documentation form for Munich. Or, but I don't know what that covers, but it should be mapped on the SHPO map. Is it on the city map somewhere? But I know that area south of Broadway and along Jefferson Street.
I don't know that Jefferson Street's
I
included.
didn't think Jefferson was included.
Well, it's not in it.
It's the 100 block of East Dunklin for sure.
Yeah, but I thought it
And
wrapped for that.
yeah,
Well, there's the Broadway Dunklin, but isn't there another district there?
well, we have a lot of individually listed properties.
Because Broadway Dunklin has it north of Dunklin and wraps Dunklin, right? But it doesn't cross the street and do south of Dunklin.
No. And I contacted the consultant in Columbia, what's her name?
Deb Shields,
Yes, about coming down and extending our,
the Munisburg Commercial Historic District.
Yeah, and that's what's within our Paul Burn boundary.
Yeah. But if you go to the survey page on the SHPO website, does it show anything that's on South Side survey?
there's Broadway, Dunklin.
Right.
Right, and then there's
Here's the map.
And then there's the Munisburg Historic.
So we have two separate ones.
Yeah, there's the commercial district and then this residential district.
And that one includes like, starts at like Casse Designs Building.
Yeah.
But I don't think the two on Jefferson are.
Yeah. Commercial Historical District, okay. But it's all, what, west of Jefferson? Doesn't include Jefferson.
No, it's just that 100 block of East Dunklin that.
Yeah, but this is the survey, which is a little bit bigger, but
Let's see.
I don't know if that whole area over there has ever been surveyed, like the neighborhood behind it. Because Old Muniford boundaries goes down to a stadium.
Can our motion just cover the investigative piece of that And then they-
District, I
Yeah,
have.
investigate
a
what-
Screenshot of our district.
and then go forward with surveying it, et cetera?
can you just pull up a general, like, Google map of, yeah.
You wanna go right here?
Yeah, that general area. Strong guy.
The building on the left there is the one in the art.
Right, yeah.
That's a demo concern, and then the building to the right there.
What is that?
That one.
That's the old bank, that was a bank, wasn't it? That
Yeah, it was.
That wasn't, that's not listed or wasn't nominated?
Today's back.
Yeah, I thought that was like a community
You're talking
bank
about
or something.
Decker Grasslands.
Coming in.
Huh?
Or-
I mean, that.
Oh, that-
In the
that
groove,
one.
yeah, where In the Groove was.
Yeah, I thought that was historically built as a bank building. I remember that. I thought,
I know there was a HCJ sent out a bunch of articles on it, right?
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
let's say Schroeder, Walter
It
Schroeder.
originally was
Wrote a big
a
block
and
around
wagon
it.
shop building, and then it was a bank after that.
Yeah, okay, I remember there being a bank connected with this building.
But it also, was drugstore.
But where the gas station is, was a funeral home or something?
Where was the Capitol Brewery? Wasn't that along there?
Across
That was
the
further down.
Further
Where
down.
Safeway was.
Oh, where the old Apple
Apple Market.
or Market was, yeah. Or Central Dairy has stuff now.
Storage.
Okay.
But the actual boundaries of Old Muniford is Monroe Street on the west, Franklin and Fillmore on the south, Mulberry on the east, and then the expressway.
Investigate.
Areas of the south side to be surveyed and then plan for an HPF grant for survey.
And whose job they're gonna be? Oh, they were gonna read it a second. No, this is just discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, we were discussing.
Well, I think, if we wanted to take that on as a project of the Historic Preservation Commission, we might just like get some maps and all of us, a few of us drive through the area and kind of outline a boundary and decide if it's more than 150 buildings, how to phase it, like what's the priority area to survey and do it in one or two.
You can do a subcommittee.
Yeah. So if, you know, if we, and maybe that's something we come back at the next meeting, maybe we just all take a little time, we drive around the south side. And I mean, Laura knows the neighborhood really well, but she can make some suggestions on priority
Yeah,
areas.
the actual Old Unionburg district, I don't think would be more than that. Now, we have a South Side district too, that goes to Stadium over to Jackson Street. So that's the
Okay, that's
entire
huge.
South Side.
Right, well, and maybe that's the phase part of it. Maybe
Right.
the concentration would be the Muhlenberg neighborhood for phase one that hasn't already been surveyed, and then phase 2, 3, however, kind of like they're doing West Main in phases. We just kind of chunked out the south side, because I do think it's a hot area for potential redevelopment, yeah.
Well,
And
but it's also had a lot of